Hello, folks. This is Dan Hollifield. Welcome to Last Man Standing. We had a really fantastic Stupid O'Clock tonight, and I may be alone for Last Man Standing, but that's all right. It doesn't mean that I'm going to go on for the full 2 hours, however, entirely by myself. But as I said, we had a really great Stupid O'Clock. It was a record breaking episode of the show. I highly recommend that you go and watch the replay there on the YouTube channel, or if you can find it on the Joe Doug has it broadcast to several Facebook channels as well as several YouTube channels and Twitch. So please do. It was a lot of fun. It was an awful lot of fun. Now, Chris Walker might be home from work in time to join me in the next few minutes before I go ahead and close the show because basically I'm not all that interesting when I'm by myself. I'm much better with guests to have a conversation with rather than a monologue. A couple of things I did manage to get done today. I re-edited the advertisement for Abducted, the original Tom Darby novel, and I have completed the prequel to the Tom Darby novel Abducted and sent it off to the publisher, and they are putting it through its paces right now. I shall hear back from them on their timetable because they are very busy. There's a lot of stuff going on. The publishing company is taking off. There's a lot more books coming out, more and faster than there were back in the day. So I'm hoping that I'll hear back on that or either of the other two books that I have turned in during that time. I have been busy working on finishing up the fantasy novel that I had set aside so that I could finish the prequel to the Tom Darby book. Um, it's coming along slowly. I'm trying to get back into the feel for the characters and get the character voices back in my head so that I can continue with that. Once I get that done, I need to write some more Spaceport Bar stories because the editor asked for another collection of Spaceport Bar stories. And then he's also asked me to put together an anthology of other writers' work in my Spaceport Bar shared universe. And I have been trying to get in touch with as many writers as possible from, once again, back in the day when that was a really hot property and it was several million people eventually read the 50 or 60 stories in the shared universe, and only about 6 or 8 of them were mine. So when the first Marin Ebrium book came out of just my stories, I had to write brand new ones that nobody had ever seen before. And that was one of the selling points of the book, that nobody had ever seen these new stories. They had never been online. And that came out in, I do believe it was 2014. And almost as soon as I put it out, one of the people that wrote a review on Amazon about how much they enjoyed the book demonstrated how much they enjoyed the book by nominating it for a J.W. Campbell Award, which is like one step down from a Hugo. For writers, that's a big deal. I did not win, but just being nominated was really neat. I have every right to capitalize on that nomination. in publicizing the collection of short stories. For some reason, I haven't, and I would say more than likely that is what I like to think of as modesty, but other people would not have such a nice term for it. Uh, Imposter syndrome has been suggested. Uh, that's not the case. I do know how good my work is because I have had testimonials by people who I really trust their opinions. And the predominant one was I got started on this, and before I reached the end of the first story, I forgot it was you that was writing it. And I just kept reading and kept reading and kept reading, could not put it down. Yeah, okay, feed my ego. It's large and needs lots of calories. But when I reread it, I forget that I was the one that wrote it. One of the things that I do is I write stories that I would like to read, but nobody else has thought of writing before, which makes editing my own stuff really hard because I get into the story rather than looking at the technical details of, oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong word. It's spelled correctly, but it's still the wrong word. You should use this word. Or this sentence is very awkwardly constructed. You think you can rewrite that one to be more to the point of what you were trying to say, rather than attempting to turn it into some kind of poetry? Uh, I think that goes back to the you should kill your darlings, no matter. Okay, let me backtrack and explain. Kill your darlings. Sometimes a writer will come out with a sentence, a paragraph, a chapter that is so eloquent and so beautiful that they really don't want to change a word of it. And then you read it in the context of the story, and it doesn't actually move the story forward at all. It's just pretty writing. And a writer should not be afraid to go, I'm going to copy that to a notebook and delete it from the story because it doesn't add anything to the story. It doesn't attract anything, but it's wasting the reader's time. It's just pretty. It doesn't do anything. The kind of stuff I write, every sentence, every chapter needs to do something. If it's not growing the character or advancing the plot or adding nice details to the world building, then it doesn't matter how pretty it is. It's got to go. It's really got to go. And I've got to kill by that particular darling. Um, a lot of my early writing was full of darlings that needed to die. There's my first attempt at a novel, which is 25 years old, is so full of darlings. I don't know if there would be any story left if I killed them all, but probably. And I'm quite certain that after this many years of practicing, I could rewrite the same story much better, much more readable, much more interesting to a reader. And eventually I will give that a shot. I've got other things that are half finished right now that have been begun after I had learned a lot of the writing tips and tricks and whatnot. Let's see here, Chris. Internet's being a pain in the backside. Trying to get in, but it's not looking good. Well, Chris, uh, don't worry. Don't worry. It's beyond your control. It's like the weather. You can't do anything about it, but you have to endure it all the same. So don't worry. It's no big deal. Uh, I've already run here 13 minutes of just me blathering on about the way that I write stuff. I'll keep blathering for a little while longer, and then I'll go ahead and hit the end credits and uh, tell the bedtime story and head off to bed myself. I got a lot accomplished out around the house today. Doesn't look like it was a lot, but it was a good workout physically, good exercise. Got the backyard mowed with a push mower, and the self propel on the push mower has died, so it's all push uphill, push downhill instead of squeeze the lever and run behind the lawnmower. I missed the run behind the lawnmower. Let me tell you that was you get your steps in with that thing on full blast. Uh, oh well, he is trying to get in. Well, if your internet works when I can see a picture, Chris, I'll click you in. If I don't see a picture, your internet is still gold bricking. What else did I manage to get done today? Re-edited the video for uh, the Tom Darby novel. I think I said that earlier in the show. There's not a transcript of anything. Um, Matter of fact, I could go ahead and play that now, just to let me regroup and see what thoughts will come into my head at the time. So this was originally a video I did before the novel came out, and it features just text and artwork from the original online version of the story. Some of the early artwork, including the original cover, was by a friend of mine named Laura Butler, and she has sadly passed. I did not know at the time that she had. Uh, it was very, very unfortunate, but we had known each other through several online chat rooms, and I had gone out to visit her in Texas. I believe it was near Denton, Texas, for Rocky Horror Picture Show fans. There was a big sign on the side of the road that said, "Welcome to Denton," and I kept wanting to get a picture of that, but at that time, cell phones were not a thing, and I did not have a an ordinary camera, one that uses film, and you have to wait 2 weeks for it to be developed, and then find out that you forgot to take the lens cap off. So I never got I never got a photograph of that billboard. But Laura was a fantastic and amazing artist. She made a living working in a taxidermy shop. So people would bring in stuff that had to be stuffed and mounted and whatnot, especially fish that the was not conducive to putting the fish skin back on the plastic mold for that size fish. So it would have to be hand painted. And she did some amazing stuff with all the trophies that people had brought in. It was wonderful. But she did the original cover for the story, and she did another of the interior illustrations. Don't have my teeth in, so I'm trying to do my best to talk without. Dentures are getting really hard to get used to. I can't eat with them, and I can't talk with them without whistling while I'm talking. So when I'm actually trying to do something, I don't put them in, which is I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna have to knuckle down and get used to the false teeth. On that note, let me go ahead and play the edited version of the advert and just hey, it is what it is. The book has been out for a little while. The prequel will be out sometime in the near future. And there are two other books that have Tom Darby as characters. One of them, he's a minor character, and in the other one, he is a voice on a radio, and that's all, just an incidental. And there are many more things to come from Mr. Darby, Captain Darby, late of the Army Air Corps of Korea, and several alphabet agencies during the Cold War. I'm very proud to say that the music behind that was one of my own compositions called SR-72, being the successor to the SR-71 Blackbird. I did have to cut that song down a bit to make it fit in with the 2-minute, 8-second video, because it turned out it was one of my 8-minute long compositions. Like, I'd normally throw stuff in there and just milk it for all it's worth. And it's, Lord, I wound up having to do a concept album for my my 9th album, and that let me go ahead and play with my propensity to ramble on and explore every conceivable variation on musical themes and whatnot. These things, they do happen. I am well known for uh, putting together a musical composition that goes on and goes on and goes on and goes on, and in most cases there are enough variations on the original theme so that it does not get terribly boring. But then again, there are occasions when it's just the variations are very, very minor, and I really should have made them more obvious variations, more further variations from the base code, basically. Should have stretched a little bit more, but I didn't. I was playing it safe. So there we go. There's a lot of stuff in my repertoire. Yeah, my ninth album. There are on my Bandcamp website. There are 9 albums of stuff that I've done. 3 of them, I do believe, are live performances from back in the garage band days. They are very rough. They are very warts and all. I cleaned them up as much as I possibly could, but there's only so much you can do with stuff that was recorded on cassette or recorded on reel to reel and then cassette, and the reel to reel tape recorder stopped working, so the cassette's all you got to play with, and then transferred to a computer. Have y'all ever tried to transfer recording from a cassette tape into a computer before there was a gadget to do that? I have. The results are variable. It depends on the original recording quality and the quality of the cassette itself. I see Chris is still trying valiantly to get in the room, but his camera is not cooperating. And, well, his microphone is live, but there's no picture, and I don't even know if his microphone is actually live or if the symbol is saying that it is live, but that's neither here nor there. All right, here's an aside for you. I started researching English canal boats as part of the character development for a character in one of the stories, and wound up getting really, really hooked on these narrow boats, wide beams, Dutch barges, things like that. If you go to YouTube and start punching in the words narrow boat, wide beam, or Dutch barge and looking at the videos, you will find a plethora of different channels by these canal boat owners detailing their adventures, some of them how they are building the interior of the shell of a boat that they bought, or the boats that they have bought secondhand, or the boats that they have permission to be built from the ground up. They are absolutely beautiful pieces of work. In the U.S., you would think of them as houseboats. The narrow boats are 6.5 feet wide and can be around, they can be anything from 30 feet long to 70 feet long. Now, for the canal system in England, which is much different from the canal system that we have here in the U.S., most of the locks that connect the different levels of rivers and lakes in the canal system are built for a maximum of a 57-foot long boat. and most of them are built for the 6.5 feet wide boats. The wide beams are uh, usually a maximum of 12 feet wide. So imagine a single wide trailer that is a boat. Imagine a double wide trailer that is a boat, fitted out like a luxury apartment. Most of these, the newer ones, are more impressive than some of the hotel rooms I've stayed in at conventions, let me tell you. And most of them are larger than the house that I live in right now. They're beautiful inside and out, and the ones that are older, more traditionally styled, and are have been kept well, but not refurbished to much more modern beauty standards, interior decorating standards, have a rustic beauty to them that is every bit as enticing as a log cabin in the middle of the woods next to a lake. This is a log cabin on the lake that floats around. I've fallen in love with this stuff. Um, Unfortunately, as I said, the canal system in the eastern United States is much different. You've heard of the Erie Canal, you've heard of the intercoastal waterways, this sort of thing. The British canals are famous for their incredibly nice views of the countryside and all of the architecture throughout hundreds of years of history that the canals were built in the middle of back in the 1700s, 1800s, 1900s. Some of them have been repaired in that length of time and are still going real well today. Most of the canals are built for the narrow boats, the 6.5 foot wide boats. There are canals that are wide enough for the wide beams, the 12-foot wide ones, and the Dutch barges, which are even bigger. The Dutch barges usually stay to rivers, things that are not 3 feet deep and 10 feet wide. And these canals were made during a time where there were no engines on these boats. They were pulled by horses. The horses were on the banks on what they call a towpath. They had ropes going to the barge, the canal boat, and the horses would pull them through. Um, there are several thousand miles of canals in the British canal system. There is a wide beam network in northern England and in southern England, but in the middle of England, there are no canals that are wide enough to connect the wide beam system north and the wide beam system south. In order to get your big boat, you have to go to a couple of places on the coast, the east coast and the west coast of England, go out basically into the shallows of the ocean and maneuver around close enough to the shore to where you're not in danger of heavy weather, but you are still close enough to get back onto the wider canals that can be accessed that away. I mean, there's one on the east coast of England. You have to go out into something called the Wash, which is basically a great big huge bay off of the British Channel between England and France. And you got to get out into the channel and go around the sandbanks and then come back in another wider canal off of that. The narrow boats can go. There are canals to connect the north and south. It's all one big system for them. They don't have to worry about heading out to sea and then coming back. And they're really nice things. Now you've got to remember these things have like a 40 horsepower engine is a big engine. You get into the Thames River when the tide's coming in. You're getting on down towards the outlet to the sea, and the tide is coming in or going out. You've got to have some horsepower to go upstream when the tide's going out. You've got to have some horsepower to go downstream when the tide's coming in. There, on the canals, there is a speed limit when there are no moored boats on either side of you. You can go all of a whopping 4 miles an hour. When there are boats moored nearby, common courtesy is to slow down to just idle speed, just barely ticking over, so that you don't create a wash behind your boat that is enough to pull the moored boats away from the shore of the canal, the edges of the canal. Because not always are they moored up really well. A boat going by real fast, the wake from that boat can actually undo the mooring pins and get this poor innocent boat that was just parked there, somebody trying to get some sleep, pull them out in the middle of the canal, turn them sideways and have them block the entire canal, or get them stuck in shallows on both ends. And it's a little bit of effort to get these things loose, because the average weight is somewhere between 30 and 50 tons. Now, for my American friends with houseboats and cabin cruisers and all the rest of the pretty stuff that we've got over here, how close is your boat to 45 tons? They are made of steel. They are not made of fiberglass. They're not made of aluminum. You're talking the bottom hull is flat. There's no keel. And it's half an inch thick steel. The sides and the uppers above the gunnels are 1/4 inch thick steel. These things were made to be cargo vessels, with sometimes an entire family living in what amounts to a walk-in closet, and the rest of the boat given over to cargo, because that's what it was for, hauling stuff from one city to another without getting out in the ocean, combing the entire interior of England, taking raw materials to one place, bringing finished goods away from that place, spreading it out all over, getting it to the places and people that are going to be selling that to the general public. And let's just say it's There's a lifestyle to that. There's a lifestyle to that. A lot of people, there are these marinas that they will go in not just for the wintertime when the canals would actually freeze up a little bit, have a nice little surface of ice on them. Some folks would stay there year round, like well, imagine if a trailer park was a bunch of boats, basically. People just living there. They've got shore power. They've got uh, stores and whatnot as part of the marina. Maybe a nightclub, whatever, uh, restaurants, and they never leave. Some folks, they leave during the summer and come back for the winter. Some folks are what they call continuous cruisers. They don't have a permanent mooring anywhere. They just go up and down the canals all over the place. And it can take a couple of years to explore every bit of the canal network. I think if I remember correctly, there's something like 7,000 miles of canals, and a lot of them are interconnected. Some of them you go all the way up, and then you have to turn around and come back down and get on a different canal because there's not any. It's like a cul-de-sac. There's not an exit at the end. You basically have to turn around and come back the way you came and take a different route to go on a different canal. It's fascinating stuff. And like I said, I originally got into this researching background material for just one character in a story. I thought it would make him more colorful if he was known for living on one of these canal boats, basically a houseboat in England. And I did not realize how addictive the uh, the, the videos of the different uh, vloggers would be. There's so many interesting people that have spent years and years and years on these boats, and some of them eventually sell their boats and decide to buy a house and move back on the land. Some of them would never ever leave the water. They just love it that much. There are many differences between the British canal system and the American canal system. Let's see, from what I've learned, on the Erie Canal, you are not allowed to drop anchor or moor up on the side of the canal. You are only allowed to go from one port to the next port without stopping in between. I don't know why that is, but it is. British canal system, you get out in the middle of nowhere, you can pull over to the side, moor up your boat there, as long as it's not marked with a sign that says no mooring or private mooring. You can either, there's some of them that say 24 hours, there's some of them that say 14 days, have signs letting you know how long you can stay there. Some of them are just out in the middle of nowhere and have no limit, basically, because they are so far out in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody that can come and check and see how long you've been there. But given that the onboard water supply and the need to either pump out or empty a cassette toilet, there's pump out toilets, there's cassette toilets, which are basically a chamber pot. And then there are incinerator toilets, which use a lot of natural gas, which comes in big bottles, like 3 times the size of what you would hook up to a barbecue grill over here. And they would use that bottle gas to incinerate uh, human waste. There are composting toilets that basically seem to be in direct competition with the incinerator toilets for how good they are. But you do need to empty the compost with its contents of what has been composting, and that seems to be a big topic of conversation between canal boat owners. This is what kind of toilet you got, how do you deal with the smell, how much does it cost to use the incinerator toilets, how long do you have to go in between emptying the composting bucket on the composting toilets, how long do you have to go between doing the pump out toilets, the cassette toilets, which, like I said, they're basically chamber pots, which was a feature in my childhood. One of my childhood chores was taking the chamber pot to the outhouse and dumping it in and bringing it back up and using the water hose out next to the road to rinse everything out and clean it and get rid of any smell before the chamber pot got taken back in the house. And that was at my paternal grandmother's. So I can pretty much relate to having to use a cassette toilet, having to empty one. But basically you got about 2 weeks worth of fresh water in a great big huge water tank that's part of the boat, and you've got a week or two with your toilet, whatever kind you've got, unless it's an incinerator, that there's not an awful lot to be emptied. You do have to get rid of the ash from time to time. These things are fascinating. I actually wound up attempting to design one. Now, bear in mind, my ignorance is rather extensive in boat design, but I'm not letting that stop me. I can do some nice drawings. I really could use some hard numbers on the floor to ceiling height, the depth that goes in the water. There's a special term for that. I can't remember it at the moment. And the different lengths, the different widths, the different styles of steering the boat, whether it's a tiller or a wheel or well, I think that's there are 2 or 3 different kinds of steering decks with a tiller, and then there's 2 or 3 with a wheel, like you'd see on a lot of other boats, cabin cruisers, your world famous pirate ships, but a much smaller wheel. Now I'm going to have to step away for a moment, and nature is calling. Let's see if there's anything around here that I can use. Yeah. Let me play this one, and I'll be back as quick as I can. Oh, that was nice. I do believe that is a track or part of a track off my ninth album. The name of the album is Invocation. The original title was That'll Put You to Sleep. Uh, Basically, what I wanted was a meditation album or a sleep aid, basically, for people that needed some relaxing sounds playing in the background quietly, almost ambient, while they tried to get some sleep. And there was not an awful lot of really like a lightning crashing or thunderstorms or whatnot. There was a little bit of rainstorm in a couple of them, but nothing uh, that would disturb your sleep or interrupt your meditation. Uh, I do believe that was off the ninth album. I'm not sure. Now, it's entirely possible that while I was doing the ninth album, I wrote an extra piece of music and put it to this little intermission card. I don't remember. It's been several months. It's been several months, so I do not know. But in any case, uh, you kind of get the idea. When I need a piece of music for something, be it an advert, the show intro, the show outro, um, incidental stuff in the show, um, title cards, whatever. Rather than risk getting a copyright strike, I'll go ahead and write the music myself, and it's all composed in the computer. There are no actual musical instruments or musicians have been harmed in the creation of this music. Some of it's really good. Uh, Bit of something there for everybody. You can go on my Bandcamp site. It's Dan Hollifield at bandcamp.com. Just it's all free to listen to. Although they start nagging you to buy something after about the fourth or fifth song that you listen to, you don't have to. If you find something you like, you can buy an individual song, or you can buy the entire album. The purchase price is usually something like 50 or 60 cents per song. And you've always got the opportunity to pay more if you think it's worthwhile. Uh, I have had like a $10 album out there, and somebody gave me $20 because they thought it was a really good album. So I always put that option in there just in case someone decides that what I do is well worth their hard-earned cash. It's fun. I like writing the music. I like sitting and composing. The editing is like with writing. The editing is always the hardest part because you got it done. You got all the instruments in place. Now you've got to make this part louder and this part softer, or this instrument louder or this instrument softer. You've got to decide this bit needs to be cut out and pasted in earlier or cut out entirely because it doesn't work with the rest of the stuff, and what can you use to fill it in. It's like writing a story. You got the idea, you got the basic first draft, then you go in and you start tweaking it. You start looking for typos. You start looking for words that get repeated too often, or words that are spelled correctly but still not the word that you meant. I believe those are called homonyms. So yeah, they're pronounced the same, but they have totally different meanings and sometimes totally different spelling. Another thing I like to do is artwork. Uh, Matter of fact, when I get finished with the fantasy novel that I'm working on, I'm going to paint what I want for the cover art, front and back. Uh, I have not done an oil painting in possibly 20 years, and I do miss it. I do miss it. I used to paint a lot. Um, I have I have a few pieces that I did that wound up in some local art galleries. I mean, nothing that's would have a big name that anybody would recognize, or would be on some kind of a tourist map of this, that, and the other thing. Um, I've done several, and they do overlap that I have gotten paid for. Uh, some of them on commission, and somebody has at least twice walked up and watched me paint something and go, "I'll give you money for that when you're done." And I'm going, "Sold American, yeah." Um, there are a few that I wish that cell phones had been a thing at that time, because I do not have photographs of this work. I really wish that I had photographs of something that I had sold, but I didn't even own a camera, much less a cell phone that hadn't been invented yet. Or at the time, cell phones were the size of a brick and didn't have cameras built into them. They're more like a walkie-talkie, but you know, these things are they times change. You got to roll with it, or sit and gripe about it, and griping about it doesn't change anything, doesn't advance anything. A lot of people, if they had their druthers, we'd still be writing on manual typewriters and having to use carbon paper and whiteout, or what was the one that was just a white sheet of like Xerox, not Xerox, carbon paper, but it was white, and you made a typo. You held that in front of the key, and you backed everything up to that letter that you typoed, and hit that letter again on your typewriter, and it would white it out. And then you had to type the correct letter back in if you had everything lined up correctly. With some typewriters, it was really hard to line everything back up correctly. It's it's a measure of how times have changed. I'm so comfortable now with the word processor. The first time I ever tried to write a novel, it was on a manual typewriter, not even an electric, just a manual. And that was a lot of fun. And in the old movies and TV shows about the older times, when somebody's sitting there and typing, reach the end of a line, hit a lever, and there's a bell, and everything slides back to where you wanted to the side of the page where you could start another paragraph or whatever. And it's soothing, it's hypnotic, it's like a river flowing once you actually are typing at a decent speed. Uh, you get used to not only the motion but the sound. And now I am totally committed to word processors, which are not loud. You can barely hear the keys being tapped unless you're playing it like some 1700s piano composition and slamming everything down. But the nice thing is, you got a typo. The word processor program you're using, if it's a good one, we'll highlight it and say, unless you're writing dialogue, you misspelled that one. It doesn't help with the homonyms that are correctly spelled but the wrong word. Um, and then with a word processor, you can also throw in illustrations, either hand drawn or photographs or whatever floats your boat. They're much harder to get published on paper. Um, should be easier for ebooks. It's definitely easier for web pages. When when I first started doing Aphelion, I learned how to write web page code while I was writing the manuscript in a word processor. And then after a while, I shifted over to a word processor that was doing web page code as I was typing. And you only had to go in and put in a few code tags by hand to get a right and proper web page. Think of it as um, a hidden set of symbols that would set up the page layout, the typeface, the font, the type size, the color of the type, whether or not you've got a photograph or a hand drawn illustration in there, whatever, telling everything where it was supposed to be, how big it was supposed to be, uh, whether it was Times New Roman or Courier or Calibri or Georgia or any of the other fonts out there. And I know that's post production stuff, but at the time I was doing it as pre production and actual production, just getting it all done at one time. I was thinking in web pages. Sometimes I still think in terms of web pages and the codes and code tags and whatnot. But that's getting further and further from my mind now that things are much more um, automated towards doing your web page. You've got dedicated word processors that are web page creators, and you go ahead and you type your stuff in, and you hit save as an HTML file, which is what a web page file uh, extension is, and bingo, you got a web page. You can go back and tweak that this way, that way, or another way until you get it exactly the way you want it to look on screen. And you can also get it exactly the way you want it to look if you were to print out that web page. Margins just so, this text centered, this text justified left, this text justified right for some strange reason. This picture here, this picture here, link it to the text that it's in. So if you change the font size, it doesn't have to be moved. It stays right with the text it's referring to. Sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? But it wasn't really. This was the easy way. The hard way was trying to write it where you had to add in every web page tag, every HTML tag to get it to do anything. You learned a lot back then. You learned a lot about the tags. You learned where you needed one. You learned where you didn't need one, but you had to put them in by hand every time. Now with this stuff, it's much easier. It's much easier. It's much more automated. You basically just type and save. And like any other kind of writing, you edit and edit and edit and edit. And once you put it online, once you upload it to the website, then you find out you didn't edit enough. That's always the case. That's human nature. You think you've got every little bit detail ironed out, everything accounted for, then you hit send and realize there's a typo that you missed. But unlike an email with a web page, you can go back and correct it and upload it again. And sometimes you do it quick enough that nobody even notices the typo had been there. They just see the corrected stuff, especially if you're doing things on a deadline and nobody's going to look to see what you got done until after the deadline. So, okay, folks, I have done an hour of monologuing here about boats and writing and design and painting and lots of things that I have fun with. I'm amazed that I managed to get this far as a monologue. Let me tell you, I did not think I had that many interesting things to talk about. But apparently, I seem to. Oh, Mike, hey there. Don't know. Let's see, 207. Oh, you just popped in, and I'm fixing to end the show, Mike, because uh, I'm alone now. So no, we had all the guests in Stupid O'Clock tonight. And I know you missed that because you were asleep. You're just now waking up and having your coffee or tea, as the case may be. But you should go back and watch tonight's Stupid O'Clock because that was a really good show. Um, Last Man Standing has just been me sitting here rambling for an hour. So instead of sticking it out for another hour and going further afield, I'm going to go ahead and play the end credits and call this one a short one, and it'll make up for the ones that are 6 hours long. And I wasn't asleep. We were all talking for 6 hours. So, yeah, there was one where the show ended after the obligatory 2 hours, and I nodded off and was still sitting there on the camera when everybody trying to wake me up. That show lasted about 5 hours before I woke up. I did not put that one on YouTube. I deleted that one before it wound up on YouTube because, I saved a copy of it in case I ever figured out how to edit all my nodding off and giving people a good view of the top of my head or whatever while I was snoring. If I ever take the time to figure out how to edit that out, then yeah, I'll upload that because it was a good show before that. But the world does not need everybody shouting at me to wake up. So, good night, everybody. Let me get back here to the brand tab, and we will go ahead and tell the bedtime story and sign off for the night. Come back next Thursday for another Stupid O'Clock, another Last Man Standing, but much earlier in the day. We start at is it 9 o'clock for Stupid O'Clock on Thursdays and 11 o'clock for Last Man Standing on Thursdays. It's only Saturdays we start at 10 for Stupid O'Clock and 1 a.m. for Last Man Standing. All my friends who are night owls are quite welcome to join in on the late night show. Insomniacs Incorporated. We should have our own little theme music. Oh, Lord, that means I'd have to write it. It'd probably put everybody to sleep, and that'd be the end of Insomniacs Incorporated. Ha ha ha. All right. Don't we all have something to do in the morning? I know I do. And it involves not waking up with an alarm clock for a change.